Even if Mahmoud Khalil isn't deported, as the Trump administration is trying to do, the damage to free speech in the United States may already have been done, and that damage may be significant. The Trump administration has arrested and detained Mahmoud Khalil. He is a lawful permanent resident of the United States. That means he's a green card holder. People who live in the United States as lawful permanent residents have First Amendment rights under the Constitution. The Supreme Court has been saying that for nearly a century. So when the administration tries to deport someone for what he said, they're undermining free speech rights, not only for him and not only for people who are green card holders, they're doing it for everybody because that's how free speech works. The message to everyone else is that the administration might find a way to punish you for your speech too. And so the point of free speech rights, like all fundamental rights, is that either everyone who's entitled to them has them or no one who has them is genuinely safe. So there's a fundamental contradiction between what Trump said coming into office and what his administration is doing in this case. That's the reason that a lot of people who have no sympathy whatsoever for Khalil's politics nevertheless are protecting his right to express his opinion. The Trump administration has been suggesting that they don't think that Khalil committed any crimes, but that they want to test whether the law that says that the Secretary of State can say that someone should be deported because it's against our foreign policy interests for them to be in the country is in fact constitutional. And the question that the courts will now have to decide is whether that provision of immigration law violates free speech when it's applied to kick out someone based on words that he said. The other provision that they might rely on in the future says that if someone espouses or endorses terrorism, they can be deported from the United States, even if they're here lawfully. The trouble with these two provisions of law is that they would each violate the basic principle of free speech, which is that if you're in the United States, you can express your political opinions without being punished, and being kicked out of the country definitely counts as being punished. There's, however, a deeper thing to worry about, which is that even if the courts are able to do their job and free speech ultimately is vindicated, that the message that will be sent to the public nevertheless is that your free speech rights are less strong and less protected than they were before this arrest. That's the kind of damage that has long-term effects on eroding the freedom of speech. And we have a lot of important rights in this country, but I think in a democracy, the freedom of speech is second to none in terms of its fundamental nature. If I can't express my opinion here, if you can't express your opinion yourself, then we really would no longer be living in a legitimate democracy.
The president sent federal agents to arrest a man for speaking. Don't get lost in anything else. The rest of the story. The president of the United States sent federal agents under direct orders to arrest a man for speaking. That people are getting all tied up in citizenship and visas and green cards and all this other. The president of the United States sent armed federal agents to arrest a man for speaking at a protest, and they are now trying to deport him from the United States. Do not get this messed up. Again, they're going to be like, oh, but he's supporting the president of the United States. Sent armed federal agents to a man's apartment, ripped him from the arms of his pregnant wife, threw him in a van, drove him across a river, tossed him into an ICE detention facility, then flew him halfway across the country to hide him deeper inside of the ICE deportation system, so that way his lawyer and his wife, who was 8 months pregnant, could not find him, all because he spoke at a protest. The president of the United States did this. And then the president of the United States has tweeted, along with members of his administration, along with his allies, along with his donors and others, that this is just the first one. The president of the United States is declaring that the First Amendment is dead, that the only speech that is protected is speech that Donald Trump allows. That is what this entire moment is. And anyone who tries to claim otherwise is lying to you, or hoping that it isn't happening. Pull your head out of the sand. The president of the United States is arresting people for their free speech. And if this continues, we don't have a constitution.
The judge understood that we've been denied legal access to our client, and so he said he will issue an order guaranteeing us a privileged legal call today and a privileged legal call tomorrow so we can communicate with him as his lawyer. The government thinks this case should be kicked out of this court and either sent to New Jersey or Louisiana. We will evaluate that argument, but in any event, in whatever court he's in, his detention would still be unlawful, and we would demand his release from whatever court ultimately has jurisdiction. This case has been important because it's a canary in the coal mine. Here is a prominent Palestinian human rights activist, and all Palestinian activists in this country, and particularly on the Columbia campus, have a target on their back for engaging in peaceful advocacy. And the idea that one could not just be, say, disciplined by a campus, but arrested, detained, and removed by the full authority of the entire United States government is a very dangerous authoritarian step. We seek to litigate his habeas corpus petition and get his release, and if the government wants to continue to put him through processes that, removal processes, we will fight that in immigration.
Prime example is why black folks aren't moving. I'm gonna keep saying this. See, now we move differently. See, they showed y'all in the movies, we had a book, it was called The Green Book, and why it was developed. See, now we have to go back, once again, to the memories of our ancestors before us in order for us to move the way that we need to move, which is why y'all only see a few speckles out there every once in a while in these protests. But the majority, the $2 trillion worth of black dollars, yeah, it's gonna snap sooner or later in their heads. Sooner or later, they gonna get it. Sooner or later, black folks gonna get it. But that's why we're not moving. That is why we're not protesting. We don't have First Amendment rights anymore. But we knew that when Donald Trump came down the escalator. And we saw how America welcomed him. Yeah. Yeah.
To those of you that are celebrating Mahmoud Khalidi's arrest, number one, you sound ignorant. Number two, this is going to be a repeat of what the United States government did with the Patriot Act, where they convinced all of you that it was going to be for foreign adversaries and they were going to spy only on foreign adversaries and not on the American people. And now every single thing you do is monitored. And they convinced you, because you guys are all so worried about everybody else, that it's for foreign adversaries, and now they use it on you. This arrest of Mahmoud Khalid is a testing ground. It is a testing ground to see if they can legally detain legal residents and make them disappear. Mahmoud Khalidi is a legal resident. He is married to an American citizen. He has not broken any laws. There are no charges against him. And when his lawyer asked for the warrant, they said they didn't have one and that his green card was being revoked. What did Mahmoud do in order to get his green card revoked? They said Hamas-like activity. He organized pro-Palestinian protests against a genocide that has been declared.
This is Mahmoud Khalil. He's a Palestinian graduate student at Columbia University in the US. He was taken and arrested from his home by immigration and customs enforcement agents for his activism for Palestine and for his role in the Columbia University encampments last year.
This is not a matter of simply violating university rules. This is a movement, an anti-war movement.
Mahmoud is a green card holder and a permanent resident in the US. He was a graduate student at Columbia University until just last December. Late on Saturday night, undercover ICE agents came to his university-owned apartment and said they were acting on State Department orders to revoke Khalil's student visa. Information they got wrong, as when he told them he was a permanent resident and a green card holder, the agents said they were revoking that instead, according to Mahmoud's lawyer. They also threatened to arrest Mahmoud's wife, who's an American citizen and is 8 months pregnant. Mahmoud was detained in New York and flown to an immigration jail in Louisiana. This marks a significant escalation in the Trump administration's pledge to detain and deport student activists. In one of the latest developments in his case, a federal judge in New York ordered the Trump administration not to deport Mahmoud, pending a legal fight over his detention. It was revealed that Mahmoud had sent emails to the university to protect him a day before he was detained, saying that he hasn't been able to sleep, fearing ICE or other dangerous individuals might come to his home. He urged them to intervene and provide necessary protection to prevent further harm. His arrest sparked international outrage, with large protests taking place in New York demanding his release.
Release Mahmoud Khalil now! He's on the side of truth, and he represents the majority of the people in this country.
And Columbia University staff expressed their outrage over his arrest and the university's conduct.
The university, I have to say, facilitated this abduction. having pursued disciplinary charges against him for over a year that were clearly baseless, and when we proved it to them that they were baseless, the charges were not dismissed, they put a target on his back, and they provided no protection for him over the last several days. The universities have two most sacred commitments and missions. One, to keep our students safe, and second, to educate them. We have to say that Columbia abridged those two sacred missions so abominably in this case, in Mahmoud's case.
President Trump posted from the official White House account, "Shalom Mahmoud, ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalid," stating the claims against him that he's a radical foreign pro-Hamas Columbia student, adding that this is the first arrest of many to come. Many have described this move as the Trump administration descending into fascism, ordering the extrajudicial arrest and deportation of a permanent US resident and cracking down on free speech and civil liberties based on frail accusations and smear campaigns. Mahmoud Khalid's arrest marks the first publicly known effort under Trump's promised crackdown on students who joined protests against Israel's war and genocidal campaign in Gaza.
They're now going after green card holders. Please listen, this is a very swift and alarming, albeit predictable, escalation. A green card holder by the name of Mahmoud Khalid has just been taken into ICE custody. He's been convicted of no crimes, nor apparently charged, and best anyone can tell is that it's because of his pro-Palestinian activism, which, by the way, is perfectly legal for him to engage in as a green card holder. This would be a violation of his First Amendment right, which is not just for citizens. Regardless, after entering his Columbia University residence without a warrant, his attorney was informed that they would be revoking his green card. This escalation is incredibly swift but not surprising. Recently, it was threatened that international student visas would be revoked over this sort of activity. Just 3 days ago, it was announced that they were considering revoking the legal status of Ukrainians, around 240,000 of them who had been welcomed in while fleeing the conflict, as part of the plan to strip the legal status from more than 1.8 million. Just over a month ago, in early February, the temporary protective status, legal status for almost 350,000 Venezuelans was also stripped. All of these people were here legally until someone decided that they weren't. And all this, of course, is an escalation from going after non-criminal migrants, despite the claims that they're going after the worst of the worst and the criminals and all that. This is not about criminality. This is not about just wanting people to do it right and go through the proper channels. These people are here legally until someone decides that they aren't, whether it's because they don't like where you're from, they don't like who you're at war with, or they don't like what you're saying. And if that alone does not upset you, which it should, they have already and repeatedly told us that the eventual goal is to go after citizens too. It is happening incredibly quickly. If you're someone who supports this because you think it's about illegals, please reconsider.
It is difficult to think of a better example of the pernicious effects of Zionism in political life in the United States than the case of Mahmoud Khalid, because the Republicans did not pick him at random. He is the canary in the coal mine for their experiments in trying to suppress freedom of speech and freedom of political affiliation in the United States, both because he's Palestinian and because they know the Democratic Party. They know how the Democratic Party is compromised when it comes to Israel because they are compromised themselves. They have seen the lengths that the Democratic Party will go to defend Israel and to defend Israeli interests in the United States. There are 214 Democratic Congress people. Only 14 of them signed a letter demanding the release of Mahmoud Khalil. Chuck Schumer grudgingly wrote out a message blaming Khalil for perceived anti-Semitism rather than addressing the elephant in the room, which is that if the Republicans are able to get away with this, no one in the United States is safe. It will only be a question of time until the Trump administration is able to go after anyone they want. But I think that the Republicans wouldn't have dared to do this if the Democrats hadn't been paving the way by demonizing pro-Palestinian protesters for a year, by allowing violence to be committed against them, by inciting it.
Breaking Mahmoud Khalil news as his case is currently in court right now. In New York, a federal judge is hearing pivotal questions on Wednesday in the case of Mahmoud Khalid, the leader of the Gaza Solidarity protests at Columbia University, or one of the leaders. And Khalil is facing deportation just for speaking out and practicing his First Amendment right. Now, he is a green card holder, so there is no reason that he has to be turned away. This is in the Thurgood Marshall Courthouse in Manhattan, and as I said, he isn't charged with a crime, but the Trump administration thinks he should be deported for protesting, which they have been equating with terrorism. That's right, he just protested something that was not okay, and now he is being called a terrorist.
I hope people will realize that the same people who spent the last 5 years complaining about free speech and cancel culture and the woke left and the progressives and the socialists and the communists are now trying to deport you for saying something critical about Israel.
Mahmoud Khalil, a student at Columbia University, appeared in court today after being detained by plainclothes DHS agents while walking back with his pregnant wife to their student housing. Khalil was taken because of his outspoken criticism of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Khalil appeared before Judge Furman in the Southern District of New York. His lawyers argue that Khalil's treatment has made it difficult to defend him. They pointed out that he was moved nearly 1,000 miles away from his pregnant wife and legal team, limiting their access to him. They also accused the government of delaying phone calls with Khalil, further obstructing his defense. The lawyers asked the judge to ensure that they could have privileged conversations with their client. Now, Judge Furman ruled the following. Filings will be unsealed with the consent of both parties. Khalil is allowed 2 privileged calls with his lawyers, one today and one tomorrow. Amended petition is due by 9 p.m. The judge did appear skeptical of the government's arguments on jurisdiction, so moving him from New York to Louisiana. Thousands of people gathered in New York City to demand Khalil's release, and millions more protested worldwide. His lawyer said that he was targeted because of his support for Palestinian rights. They also said the government blocked his contact with them. The state says that Khalil was given a notice to appear in a Louisiana court for removal proceedings. As of now, Khalil will not be released today.
We want justice, you say how? We want justice, you say how? Release Mahmoud right now! Release Mahmoud right now! We want justice, you say how? We want justice, you say how? Hands up for students now! Hands up for students now! Viva, viva Palestina! Viva, viva Palestina! No more money for Israel's crime. People across this country are gonna rise up if they continue these illegal actions that are stripping our rights. justice, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
Next step, out the fucking country. Keep it up. Fuck around and find out.